That seems to be working. Oh look, it's working. Cool. Yeah. Could add. Oh, I forgot how to add the web video capture device. I think that's the one, isn't it? There we go. Okie dokie. Oh, it's me. Resolution. There we go. That's me. Oh. Yo, there we go. Make me small. I've got small. Do me in the corner. Oh, there we go. I'm hiding in the corner. You can still see me. Hey, there we go. Alright, where's my code? Oh, yes, it's in the wrong place. Let's see. Three. No, that should be two. So I'm getting closer. I've got my code there. Just want to. So I'm going to do some hacking on Cider, which is the Emacs client for Clojure. And I thought I'd share just how little I actually know about Cider and Elisp. So if you're expecting to learn a huge amount, then you might be disappointed. But if you want to see me experimenting and both with OBS and with Cider, and feel free to watch along. Let's see now. I want to make that into my own screen. There we go. Right, so we've got. Yeah, so you can feel free to watching. This is going to be interesting. I'm not sure if it's going to be interesting. That's quite an ambitious statement. It could be interesting as a car crash. Let's see. Yep, I'm going to put that on its own screen. There we go. So I'm going to be using Spacemacs. So I've got Spacemacs going with the Practically configuration. So Spacemacs develop, and I'm using a layout. Sorry. Oops. No, I'm not. Space layer. Why is my keys not working? Oh, I'm pressing the wrong button. Oh dear. Live broadcasting, so much fun. Space. So I've got a layout in Spacemacs, specifically for hacking Cider. And so in here I've cloned, if I go to GitHub, if I go to Magit, I basically cloned the Git. So I've cloned the Git repository for Emacs Cider. So we go to Emacs Cider. There it is. So I've cloned this onto my file space, and it just uses the master branch as the kind of development branch. There is some other branches there, but when you're doing a pull request, it just seems to be towards the master branch. I actually did a pull request not that long ago. There it is. That's me. Look, J Rocket. That's me. Yay. So that's just against the Clojure Emacs master. I just created a branch on my fork. So I've got a fork of this project. So it's already forked into JRocket Cider. And I've cloned my fork down into the file space, and there we go. the fix I was looking at previously was the fact that when you call, if you do a spacemax, if you do like a cider-jack-in, so let's just switch to for Clojure. So this is a Clojure project. Yes, I'll be able to. So this is for Clojure project. It's got a Dependencies and a project. I started off with a linear project. I've just converted it to a Dependencies project just by adding paths in there and the deps, which is just Clojure itself. Just chucked in an extra alias, just included test path, just so I can use the cider test runner. And this environment variable isn't picked up by cider by default. You have to tell it to use it. So you can either tell it to use it when you call cider-jack-in. So if I do space u for the universal argument and then do comma quote, that launches sentiment start. Looks like cider-jack-in. You can see I've got now down the bottom I've got this command line, which is what cider runs for the to basically run a REPL using the Clojure CLI tools. And so cider injects these deps into the command. So this whole part after Clojure is injected by cider by default. And the fix was to actually put this put the alias in the right place. So now the alias goes in after the steps. So we've got this steps which includes nREPL refactor, because I've got CLJ refactor included in my Emacs setup, and it uses cider nREPL for cider to talk to nREPL. And nREPL is the runs the server with it on the REPL side of things, so that cider nREPL can talk to it. At least that's how I understand it works. And then I'm injecting this custom alias in here, which is now in the right place. So this is only in this place now with the very latest release, which I think was yesterday, of cider. And then cider also injects the main namespace, which is just calling nREPL command line and injecting the middleware for CLJ refactor and for cider itself. And I can go in and edit this. So actually, the new way to use this is to use the M flag rather than the A flag. The A flag's being deprecated for the Clojure CLI tools. And yeah. So that's where. So beforehand, unfortunately it was putting the aliases, the M flag and A flag here, which kind of worked for the A flag, but it was causing a problem for the M flag, because the M flag does things properly according to its own rules, while the A flag was a little bit more generous. If I run this, then that's the command that basically starts the server, starts the REPL process externally, and then cider then connects to that via localhost and the port number there, and we've got a running REPL. We can go in and evaluate code. There we go. And if we look at the buffer, messages buffer. Oh, I've still got my debugging code in here as well. Oh, that's quite handy. So it's where we're calling cider jack-in. As it's starting the REPL, we need to make sure that the REPL process starts with the right dependencies. So this is the little bit of magic that cider uses. So it's injecting these dependencies in here. So this is the information it's getting about itself, about what dependencies it needs to include to do a cider-jack-in properly. And then this is pulling this from its there's a global options variable that we've set to inject this, and these are the kind of what it calls the parameters that it's injecting. And then it generates this. So this is, so you don't normally see this. I've just put some print lines in the code so I can see what's going on. Classic debugging technique. And yeah, actually what you do see when you start cider-jack-in is this starting server via Clojure. You can see it's got the deps in there that it's generated, and then it has the aliases for Clojure CLI tools, and then the additional parameters, which is basically just calling the Clojure main name. So it's basically setting the main namespace. There's some additional middleware to pull in as well. So if you go back to, so let's do space L tab to go back to the previous layout, which is the hack cider layout. Make this a little bit bigger. There we go. I can see it on my other screen now. There we go. There we go. Quit. And so, so this is the hack cider one. So this is the code that I do the changes on for pull requests. And you can see this is the cider-jack-in function that works out the dependencies. And at the moment it's doing that in 3 distinct parts. It's got global ops, parameters and dependencies. So it first calculates all the cider-jack-in dependencies. Yeah, so it's just using the same ones as it uses for lining, and I think so there isn't really any difference in the libraries that we're actually including when we're jacking in between Lannigan and Clojure CLI tools. They're the same dependencies, so we're still including nREPL, cider nREPL, and then optionally CLJ refactor. I'm going to put some Vicks on my nose because it's a bit. Oh, there we go. I can breathe a bit better now. Yeah, so this function is putting together. So this is the dependencies. Well, it's called dependencies. So that's handy. So it's basically taking the dependencies and that we're already passing in. So I need to check to see where that's coming from. And this is, I guess this is some additional dependencies it's adding to the dependencies it's passing in. So I'm not quite sure what the difference is there. I could also do some print statements to find out what dependencies are coming in versus what cider-jack-in is actually doing. But I'm guessing that this is yeah, whether or not to include CLJ refactor, because that's kind of optional. I think I'm not quite sure if that's doing that or not. But essentially, it's just creating this string here. So it's basically going to concat a string together that is the structure of the command. So here we're using sdeps, which is part of the Clojure CLI tools command. So it's just a flag for that tool. And then we're going through, so basically go through the dependencies and formatting them so that they are in the right, the right string for the command line. And then we've got global ops, which is the This is the aliases we're passing in, so that's the -a or the -m aliases. And here we're doing a check to see whether if they're yeah. So we include the global ops unless it's empty, and then if there's nothing in the global options, then we just put a string in there with a space, just so I think it formats the string properly. And then we add the params. So I don't think we do anything with the params, they're just kind of the default parameters that we're passing in, so they're not changing. And you can kind of see the difference because I've only fixed Clojure CLI jack-in dependencies. I've only fixed this function. Oh sugar! Oh sorry, I had the mic on mute there. So we've got this function here, which is taking in global ops, params, dependencies, and it's working out the dependencies by pulling in the argument of dependencies and appending whatever's in cider-jack-in. So the cider-jack-in lining and plugins and the ones we use for Clojure CLI tools are the same. There's no difference there in the libraries that we're using. So I'm not quite sure what the difference is between dependencies. Might be interesting to have a look at what dependencies are coming in versus what's being added to that as well. So I could do some print line statements as well until I figure out how to properly work with Elisp. And then this is just creating the right shape for those dependencies. So it's creating the right command line string. So we're using sdeps as a command line string from the Clojure CLI tools, and it's got a map deps. So this is what you would find in the project.eden file. You could also define the deps in there as well, but obviously when you're running cider-jack-in, you're not necessarily have these in the projects in the deps.eden file because they're not specific to the project, they're specific to the editor. We're building up the right command line from these dependencies with a bit of hacking on format. So I think it's just doing so it's doing a map. I wonder if that's like the map function in Clojure. So this must be a way to do describe Elisp. Oh, there we go. Luckily cider, because I'm using Spacemacs, it uses the same keys for Clojure as it does for Elisp, so I can kind of get it to do the same things even though I don't know how to use Elisp. And this is basically returning the result of applying a function to each element in the sequence. So basically it's map in Clojure, the map function in Clojure, which I thought it might be. This I've realized that this is kind of like the function in Clojure. So it's the anonymous function. It's called lambda. So this is like doing the function here in Clojure, or the syntactic shortcut of hash function here. So these two are lambdas in Clojure, and then this is the lambda approach in Elisp. And dep is the arguments, because there's no square brackets in Elisp, so that's fun. And so we're pulling in each dependency from dependencies and calling it dep. So we're binding it to dep each time. So for example, we'll take the nREPL dependency that's in this dependencies local binding, and then we're going to take that, we're going to format it. Okay, all right, yeah. So we're putting in the version as a string, so we're injecting the name of the library. Oh, car dep and this is car and cutter, so this is like first and last, I think. I think this is equivalent to that. Let's do. Does it tell me? Introduced a long time ago. This is a classic Lisp command. So return the car of list, which doesn't tell me anything about what. That's not good. That's like, it's not a good description. Because if you don't know what car is, then this doesn't help. And if you did know what car was, you wouldn't need to look at the help. Okie dokie. Documentation is hard. I do appreciate that. But this is quite useless, this piece of documentation. Carrie's head, yeah, I kind of thought it was first. I'm just generally decrying the state of documentation in the software industry. And cutter is dealt. So yeah, it's like first and last in Clojure. Yeah. I'm sure. I'm assuming tail is last and not next, or it could be next. I think in this case I don't think it makes any difference, because I think there's only two parts to the dependencies, and that's the name and the cutter is tail composed by head. I'm almost sure of it. Interesting. Yeah, so anyway, I think it's taking the name and putting it in here using car dep, so it's going to get the name of the dependency, because that's the first thing in the string, and then it's going to get the last thing, or the next thing in the string, which is the version number. So therefore we switch back to here. If we look at look at these deps, then what it's doing is it's sticking in REPL as the name, and then it's got the version, which is just the number there. So it's yeah, and same for refactors. Then it'll do refactor and REPL, and it's injecting the number. Yeah, so that's how it's working. Ooh, cool. I'm becoming an Elisp guru. Well, it's good. I can read it, even though I haven't really written any Elisp that much in anger. I've just really copied stuff from the internet. But there's enough that's the same from Clojure that makes it not too bad. And then we've got global options. Yeah, so, and then yeah, this is just putting an empty string in there, and then params. So all in all, it creates the string. And I think this string is also, yeah, and then this string is added to the command, which is created somewhere else. So there's another function elsewhere that I was looking at that actually goes and figures out what command to use. So in this case, it goes and finds out what command it should be using, which is Clojure as a command line name, and then it also works out what the path where that's actually installed. So it goes and has a look at the system executable path and works out where Clojure is, like doing the equivalent of a which Clojure, and then it creates a full path for the executable, which we've got here. So it's basically going to create this as well, and then that runs that somehow, so through an external call. Let's make sure I haven't changed anything. So the difference between this, because I fixed the cider-jack-in one, but I'm sure that the cider-jack-in dependencies has the same issue, because where this one now starts with the deps, which is correct for the command line. So we go to the wrong button. We're going to look at the 2 and that bigger. If we do Clojure -H, then the order of these are like CLJ ops, and then the aliases, either A, X, M, and P. And so the CLJ ops are these range of things, which is including the steps and an Eden expression, so basically a hash map. So that should go first, then the aliases, and then anything else. So like the does it say init ops? Yeah, init ops here, and main ops. Oh yeah, so and main ops, and then arguments as well. Ooh. Oh, I actually understand this now. Okay, helps when you read the documentation. Yeah, so it's, they're actually, they're almost in order. If we put exec ops after CLJ ops, then actually the documentation would be in order as well, but I think it's more useful to know these. That's probably why they put them at the top. Yes, so these exec ops should come after the CLJ ops, so aliases should come after deps. And so this is fixed, that's what has happened here, but here we've got the global options, which is the aliases. That's coming before whatever it's doing to work out the dependencies. So this back concat is slightly different, but essentially it's doing the same thing. It's going through the dependencies and creating the format it requires for shadow CLJS, and then it adds the params afterwards. So ideally we'd want to add, want to change this so that global ops was also kind of coming after here. Although I haven't actually done anything with shadow CLJS for a while, so I'm not quite sure. I need to do some testing on that before I submit that as a pull request. But that's the kind of quick fix, but we've had this discussion about whether that really is the best approach to actually do this, and whether we should try something slightly different, and possibly even simplify it. So if we go to the initial issue I raised about this, oh come on Mr. Internet, there we go, which is now, well maybe it should be closed. I should open another one that's associated with basically. So that was the initial issue, but then we discussed about how to do this. And it's basically Arenza that basically showed me like the quick fix. And then, yeah, so Bug is talking about doing something slightly different. So actually removing global ops and params. They seem to be more or less the same, which is true. So if we look at what the global ops and params actually are, we can go back to the Clojure project. Let's get rid of that for a second. So this is just the output from calling Clojure, so cider-jack-in. The global options are really the aliases, and then the params are the -m. Yeah, so we've got aliases, and what you can actually do is actually include this stuff in an alias. So if I go to my deps.in file, let's just open the deps. Oops. Let's open the deps file. If I go to cider, if I can spell it properly. That's, oh yeah, I see, that's a puppy. Let's look at the specific one for cider. cider-CLJ, there we go. So I've got these middleware aliases. So these are all aliases that are in my user level dependencies file for Clojure CLI tools. So it's quite a lot. I think it's about 30 or so. I should count them one day. And basically I've got these ones for, there's a simple one just for nREPL, and all that's doing is just including the nREPL library, and then calling that. So if you included this in a project, it would actually just go off and start the nREPL server within inside the project that you're running. So if you just did this on the command line and added and called your project with the middleware nREPL, then, well, actually let's do that. Let's just check that's still working. So I'm going to copy that, go to my command line, let's go to some projects, Clojure, study group's fine, study group, come on, there we go. What do we got here? My lumpy app. Oh, so we've got CD boolean. So this is just a CLJ project. So it's, yeah, Clojure project with dependency files. It's a Clojure CLI project. And if we can run this project. We run a REPL for it, and we specify the M flag, and then boop. Wow. So I think that should work. It's going to complain about nREPL, refactor nREPL not being qualified. It should be like that. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. No. Oh, excuse me. Whoa, that woke me up. I'll put some more Vicks on there. There are other ointments to make you breathe. So is that? Yeah, so if I do that, and then in theory, yeah, so we've got a server, nREPL server started on the local host. So we go to, let's do study group, there we go, and if we open the file, study group, boolean, let's just open the source file for that. And then rather than doing jack-in, I could do cider-connect, and it's on the local host, which is called range 1, so they're the same. And it's detected that there's this boolean 43879, which is what this one is, 43879. So if we do that, then that's connected to the REPL I started on the command line using nREPL, because the Clojure, so the cider connect is using cider nREPL to connect to that, and then that's working. Yeah. And I guess I could do, in theory, where is it? I lost it. It's space alt tab. Yeah, and so then this one is going further. It's also including cider nREPL. So in theory, I can jack it into this one, and just by including the alias, middleware cider CLJ. Although the problem is there's no way to jack in, there's no way to use cider-jack-in with just an alias and none of the other stuff. There's always other stuff, although actually I fixed this now, so it should work. Okay, yes, that's good. Let's show you what I'm talking about. Bless you, thank you. I seem to have had the effects of cold for, I don't know, since May, if not even before. Okay. Right, so if we go back to the project, so am I doing it in here? No, I'm not. Let's cancel that. Go back to the for Clojure project. This is just a Clojure, yeah, just a simple Clojure project. In this project, we had the dependencies file. Oops, let's do that. But we've also got so we've got the dependencies file, but we've also got this dir locals L, which is a project level configuration for Emacs, and this is what I was using to test the injecting the global options. So this is probably incorrectly titled global options. It really is. This is really the aliases that we're injecting, and because these go in the right place now, then I should be able to just get it to use these. So if I change that to M, and then this wants to be middleware, and cider CLJ, and then there's some other ones I want to add. I can basically switch off everything else pretty much except for the steps. So if I go to practically Clojure, and I did this for when I was configuring the REPL, the Cognitect REPL data browser. So you can kind of like run this. I wanted to run this with cider, so you can run it from the command line. It works straight away, more or less, once you've got it installed. But to run it from a with so cider and Carver as well, then you kind of need to pass in the these global options to be kind of the cider nREPL, the REPL libraries, and then this nREPL library as well. But the problem is all the dependencies were conflicting with that as well. So I can turn off these. I'm pretty sure I don't need the line. Oh, actually I do need those. Oh yeah, interesting. Because they're the same. So if I copy those into that dir locals thing as well, I should get a command line that only has the command name and my alias in there, hopefully. Let's see if this is going to work. Oh, using the mouse with Emacs, that's a sin. You didn't see that. Don't tell anybody I did that. Yeah. So get rid of the jack-in dependencies, the jack-in and REPL middlewares, the lining and plugins, because it's using the same, the Clojure CLI parameters. I'm not entirely sure what each of these do, but we can always remove them if they remove too much. But I think this still leaves in the kind of the the outline shape, so the S depth. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to switch back to a file from there. For Clojure source, for Clojure, nothing but the truth. So I need to open a file or reopen or revert the buffer on an existing file in order to get it to reload in the .dir locals. That's just a feature of Emacs. You can see it's even showing us which of the new bits. Oh, that's good. That's clever of it. Nice. And I want to use that, so I'll say yes, thank you very much. And I'm going to kill the REPL that's already running. Yeah, make sure there's no other. Is there any other ones running? Oh, there's quite a few actually. I should go and close those down at some point. Okay, where do we get to? Oh yes, so now I want to read the REPL again, so I'm going to use the universal argument, so let's do space U before calling comma quote for the Sesman start. Then if I do cider-jack-in now, there we go. Oh, that works perfectly. So you're still getting this. There was the annoying thing last time because I was still getting this S-depths thing, which I didn't actually want. But when it's empty, then it's not conflicting with everything that's in here. And then, so just check I haven't got anything. So I haven't got anything running on the command line, so that's good. So in theory, this should be able to jack into the REPL. Although I've never actually tested it, so it should be able to start the REPL and include all the libraries so that cider can then also jack in. So this is going to be interesting to see if it actually does work. Oh, I think that worked. Oh, I think it did work. I'm going to kill all the other REPLs just to make sure, because it had some stale REPLs, but yeah, it looks like it's worked. Ooh, that looks promising. Alright, I'm going to kill all the other REPLs and then just to make sure that that's working correctly. Because one approach to really simplify the whole thing would be to remove, to just use an alias, and whatever alias you're actually including in dir locals, that's what cider uses. And then you don't need to actually inject anything at all. Because you're including everything in the alias or aliases that you're using for cider-jack-in. So let's see where. So I'm just using Sesman's comma m browse. Where do we go? Link to this project. So if we go to that project, then I can go and kill the boop, kill it, yes. Brilliant. And I've only get this message because it's I'm killing a REPL from a different layout. So it's just confirming that I want to kill a buffer from a different layout. And then check the browser again. Oh, it's got quite a lot of REPLs open, haven't I? What's up with the failing? There we go. This is a handy way to go and kill all the. Oh, it's that Boolean one, isn't it? That was trying to join to. Because if it's got some existing sessions open to an existing nREPL server, then it does ask you whether you want to reuse them or not. What was I going to do? Oh, just press enter to visit that. QQ, Barley Brew, yes, quit, I definitely want to quit that. And then, oh, B, we're down to that one, okay. There probably isn't. In fact, if I just restarted Emacs, it would have been a lot quicker. Because it would have killed them all. Let's see. Kill. What do you really want to do? I want to kill it. No. Kill. Was I pressing the wrong button? Might be doing it. So now we should be empty of cider sessions. There we go. Right, so if we just do cider jack-in, so basically we'll set and start and then select cider jack-in. It's using the right middleware. Oh no, I don't want to reuse that. No. It's got a dead one that doesn't want to go away. There we go, but it seems to be working. I am going to restart Emacs just to make sure that the thing's really dead. We're not picking up anything externally, just to make 100% sure it's working correctly. I don't think I've got anything that I need to save. Have I? Don't think so. Oops. That's all saved. That's all saved. Here we go. Let's quit. Let's restart. I suppose I could have checked the processes. Yeah, that's REPL server still going. Let's kill that. There we go. Definitely nothing going now. Oh, I put a logo there. This is by Emacs. Few seconds for Emacs to warm up, then we're off. There we go. We want to be on foreclosure. Make that a little bit bigger again. I have to increase the font. Now I've changed the fonts. There we go. So we're in foreclosure project. Oops, no, that's not what I did. And there we go. Oh, I can change the size of the web. Change the size of the buffer with keys. I can remember how to do that now. Yes, there we go. So yeah, so we've got all the source code, we've got our dir locals, which should just inject the middleware. So one option could be that if cider sees the fact that you're using that, or if you can basically, because it's a bit of a pain having to switch all of these off when you don't need them. So we could potentially either get rid of them or have something that's simpler. That basically either if you're providing an alias, that's the only thing that you're using when you jack in, or to have another specific variable that we use. So if this is true, then we just use the alias, and if it's false, then we'll include the steps and the parameters. I think that'd be an interesting way to go. Yeah, so let's just do a final test to make sure that when we do cider-jack-in, it is working. No! What's it doing? That's not right. What? Did it not? What? I'm confused now. That's not what it should have been using. What have I done? Why is it not using the... It doesn't seem to be using the .dir locals unless I've done something silly. Let's kill the REPL. Oh, the wrong one. Kill the REPL. So we don't have a REPL running anymore. Nope. There we go. And then if we switch back to the File Explorer, press Enter to close that. Press Enter to open that. So that's there. Save that again. If we revert buffer, yes. Wonder why that didn't pick that up, did it? It didn't pick it up last time. That was a bit naughty of it. Okay, so now when we run the REPL cider-jack-in, now it's working. There we go. For some reason it didn't pull in. Well, that was quick. That was really fast. And just check it's working. Boom. Oh, that's interesting. I've got Beamer and it does. It makes the evaluations do funny things. So when I move. Oh, probably the first time. Not doing it in a while. Yeah, so that's working. False. What? Oh. Oh yeah, true is not, one is not true. But nil is true. What? Not nil. Oh, not nil, yes. What about not one? It's just some exercises from the Clojure online challenges. This is just me playing around with just what that means. Oh, not one is false. Interesting. There we go. Yeah, it's fun with Boolean expressions, true and false. Well, what do they mean? And it is nil, because not, so if not false, that's true, not nil, that's true, not one, that's false. Groovy. But anyway, that's an aside, but that's working. So I've got a Clojure CLI project that uses this dir locals to basically use the middleware cider, which I've got defined in my user level deps.in file, which is pulling in nrepl, cider and REPL, setting the main namespace and including the middleware. And then there's another version if I want to also use refactor as well. So I can actually be very specific. I'd say, well, I could have some projects using just cider, and then I can also include CLJ refactor in along with cider as well if I wanted to. Does that actually make any difference? So if I don't have cider running, so can I do CLJ refactor thingies in here, or is it going to complain? That's going to be interesting. So just be careful to choose the right one. So if I open the Clojure menu, doing comma and then R for refactor, so I've got all the refactor things in because I've started cider with cider refactor, and if I do add, not all these are here. I can't remember which ones are not here. Let's do R. Oh, there we go. Although I don't think that's. I think that's there already, isn't it? Move. What does move do? Clojure move form. Move to let. Okay. That'll be something to test out whether when you actually need to include the refactor and REPL in as a dependency, as a library there, if you've already got it in your cider setup. I suppose it doesn't hurt to include it by default anyway. It seems to be fairly bug free these days. Okay, so given that works, this alias works, then let's go back to cider. And so I've got the hack cider layout, which is basically the project for which is basically the clone of the cider project from its GitHub repository. But if I actually want to test it out, what I'm doing is just going straight to the source and then just doing hack spacemax. There we go. Anybody chatting on there? No, they aren't. There we go. Move that to. Go move that to 7 so I can see what I'm doing. Control 7. There we go. I've got everything on there now. Okay, there we go. Whoop. Boop, 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 boop. Boop. So here you can see I've got the debug statements that print out into the message buffer the different things there. And I could add, I wonder if I could add one here so I could find out what the I'm gonna add this here, aren't I? Let's see if this works. So, print, and then we do. Let's include that so we can explicitly see what that's doing. Let's call this aliases. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but I am not that skilled with using the Elisp environment yet. I'm sure it's probably similar to Clojure, but I'll go back to the old school way of doing things. And then just evaluate that. If we go back to 3, 4, no, what are we going to? Oh yeah, foreclosure. There we go. And we kill the cider. We start the cider again. What? Is that me hacking around with the code, or is it? Oh no, that is. What's both message? That seems to be a bit unreliable. That's not good. Cider, so connection closed. So cider-jack-in. Yeah, I switched all those off. What if I unswitch all those off? Door. Yeah, locals. Boop. Let's do that. Let's revert the buffer. Yes, that should have reloaded that. Make sure there's no siders. Hard start. That. So. Oh, I think I think my code has broken that. Oh, that's not good. Just print do. Does print not take multiple things? Do I need to realize around it? Quoted character. How do you do a print with a message? Nobody's watching now. Up all alone. There we go. Let's have a break for a second. Brief bit of havoc time. There we go. Okay, we're back. Let's. There we go. Message. Use message foo. Foo. Okay, thank you. It's a bit like the format. Oh, I see. There we go. Set this. Like that, I guess. dokie, let's switch back to that's not what I want. So there we go. Okay, now let's start the cider REPL. Oh, I switched all those off now, but that's fine because I wanted to see what the was working. Cool, thank you. It was nice to have somebody pairing with you when you don't know how to use the language. So if we go look at the message buffer, we see it's getting, so those are the line plugins, which is just a sequence of, oh interesting. Oh, okay. It's got like so this is the library name, the library version, the predicate to use. Oh, interesting. I'm not sure where that's used. So we got refactor, cider. So that needs to be fixed because that's not got the proper name in cider, and REPLs. Okay. And then dependencies, nREPL. Oh, so cider line plugins just has refactor and cider. And the dependencies must have just had nREPL in to start with, and then it's added cider nREPL and refactor nREPL into that. We've got the aliases, then the params. There we go. Okay. So that's some useful debugging to use. And I guess when we go back to this, there we go. So if I kill the REPL again, just make sure I can start that without all the. No, I didn't revert the buffer, did I? Oops. Kill the REPL, revert the buffer. Buffer, yes. And load the new version of dir locals in. There we go. Now we can start. Cider. And then we get. Okay, so that switches them off before they even get there. So that's interesting. So params, dependencies, and line plugins are all gone. They're gone. And we're just left with aliases. Nice. So if we go back to our cider code, and so rather than cider, we go directly back into the Emacs thing. So this is basically using the package. So the L.L file in the cider package that Emacs is using. So that way I can just use it directly. I'm just calling comma E to evaluate the last S expression. And I can make changes as I go along. So I don't actually need to get rid of this. You could put like an if statement around this, that if they're empty, then you don't do it. Just return a string, or you do an unless kind of thing. Because you could just have, well, you just comment this out as well, couldn't I? Oh, that doesn't work like that, does it? No. I guess it doesn't have the reader macro in as well, so I can't just do. I assume I can't just do that. No, that doesn't work in Elisp. That's a shame. What we can do is but if we're not using that, if that's commented out and params is commented out, yeah, there's no block commit. That's a shame. Yes. So if all we really want is the global ops, which is really the alias, then what is the actual point of this function? So probably want something before this to only call this if that's what the user wants, or if the user doesn't specify the dependencies. So I think if you're new to cider, or unless it's well documented, you would kind of create you could create a .dir locals for each of your projects, but you'd also have to have the kind of like the middleware cider CLJ alias in your user level, and you put that in your user level, so you don't need to put it into every project because it's tool specific rather than project specific. So we'll try and make, I guess to simplify this a lot, you would make calling this function optional. Oops, what did I do? There we go. Because it seems to be silly just to because you can leave this function as it is and it will generate the right information if you just want if you want the global options, the aliases and the parameters and the dependencies. I think for kind of legacy terms it's still worth keeping this function, but then whatever's calling this function, you can decide whether that actually does need to call it or not by what's in the dir locals file. So basically what variables are set in there. So if we actually, before I forget, I'll uncomment all that again. Oops. There we go. Because I think now that's fixed, we can leave it as it is for now. And let's go and find out where this is called from. So let's do a space / to search the whole project. Why is it not finding anything? how do you find out where a function is called from? That is a good question. Do symbol highlighting. Where is it? Oh, there we go. Inject-jack-in dependencies. So what's that doing? Return. Oh, okay. This is, yeah. So I think this is what we want actually. It's a good call. So we got the cider inject-jack-in dependencies. This is return the global ops, which is the aliases, the parameters with the injected REPL dependencies. Yes, these are set in. Yeah. So those are those are the three things. Injected. Limits and refactor profiles.clj are the boot scripts. Yeah. So I think this was just what they used for. So for Clojure CLI, they just basically copied more or less what they'd done for the other ones as well. What is this doing? P case, there's some kind of case statement. Evaluate expression. Oh, pattern case. For the first case is pattern matches. Evaluate its code. Okay, right. Return the value of the last form. So this is, oh okay, right, oh yes, right, so this is calling the, oops. So this is calling this with the options, with the arguments, sorry, with the three arguments, yeah, okay, right. Oops, what did I do there? Ah. Oh, that's Gradle's a lot simpler, isn't it? Okay, yeah, so we could, if we simplify it here, then it means we don't even call cider. I find this unless like is quite weird at first. I'm assuming it's going to do this unless. So if it sees this is empty, it doesn't do the line above. That's freaky. That is. Is that right? Is that how unless works? If condition yield nil, do body also return nil. Oh, maybe, okay, now maybe just, yeah, because if that is nil, it's not going to be included in the concat, I guess. So I guess we do like concat nil, and then no. Yeah. So it's just not returning, so it just drops the nil from the concat. And then, so if that's nil, yeah, because if that was nil, it wouldn't return anything. So if we just concat nil, it's not going to return a string at all. Is that right? Oh, it returns an empty string. Okay, that's fine. And so what that's doing is just returning, oh, it's returning a space, isn't it? Okay, right. So we could say is there some kind of if? We could do an if statement. Oh, that's so basic. If exists? Yeah, it does. There we go. If condition, then else. So it's just like Clojure then. Okay. So let's use an if. Just do it the simplest possible way. If oh, actually, we could do. Yeah, so I can. It's probably a much better way to do it than this, but this should work, I think. So if the sequence is empty, so if basically global ops is empty, then we're going to. Where's the if? Oh, that's the if there. So we need to slurp that in. Slurp that in. That's nice. Then we'll call. Cider-jack-in dependencies with the dependencies with the 3 arguments. Otherwise, so that's going to return a string, isn't it? I'm pretty sure these are returning strings. I suppose I could call it, couldn't I? Yeah, of course, we'd call this function, pretend to give it some dummy arguments. So if we call this, and then we give it arguments, so it's that global ops. Around. Depth. So there we go. But then yeah, and then we can do a nil. Yeah, so we can do a nil version of this. These? Oh, okay. You mean like key binding, bind keys, global map. Oh yeah, I'm using the space K menu, which has got these on, but I don't use it. I use it a huge amount, so I don't know all of the key bindings off by heart. I think it's quite useful. I'll keep it in mind. Your key binding suggestions. Thank you. Right, so I've got a couple of things to test my branches of my if statement, so but I didn't put in an extra one there. So that's still in the if. It is indeed, and so if that is empty, this is the bit key. Even in Clojure. Yeah, that's interesting. What was I doing? You keep putting me off. They're the good suggestions. Oh yes, I just want global ops in here, don't I? I guess. If it's just oh, I'm putting that in the wrong place as well, aren't I? Oopsie. Oh, but that's interesting. I put it in the wrong place. You didn't notice that, did you? But yeah, so that was, so we just want to return global ops. Can we just return a string? Yeah. Can we just evaluate a string? Yeah, it must be able to, surely. If we evaluate a string and we just get a string back. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah. Just a quick sanity check. Yeah, I've put this in the wrong place, haven't I? Oh dear. Barf, there we go. Barfing, I love barfing. Oops. Oh, yeah. Slurp that in, and go to the end of the if statement, and stick the global ops. Yeah. And hopefully I didn't break that too much. Oh, let's do it there. Ooh. And it seems to compile. Okay, so if we're calling the Clojure CLI tools, which we are, and if the global ops are empty, then it will do the normal cider-jack-in, building up the dependencies as global ops, blah blah blah. But if there's something in there, if this condition is working how I hope it should be, then it will just ignore that and just use the global ops and just return that as a string. I think. Let's just check this with inline code. Is that right? I do eval definite. Oh yeah, there we go. So eval that one. Unspotted project type deps. Oh, am I doing something? Oh, I'm not. Oh, yes, I'm passing in the wrong arguments, aren't I? So I want to pass in the argument to tell it which one to choose from, obviously. Whoopsie. Yes, so I need to pass in Clojure CLI. So I wonder if that needs to be quoted or not. Probably not. No, probably not. Yeah, so I'm passing in the aliases and the params, and then I want to pass in Clojure CLI as the project type. Let's do that again. Oh, missed it again. Oops. There we go. Simple values fine. Maybe I do need to quote that then. Oops, that's not right. Yeah, fingers and thumbs. Oh, it's static aliases. Is that because we've got all the other things switched off? Probably. I should figure out how to do debugging in this, but that might be for another time. Oh, okay, right. Yeah. Did I put that at the right? I don't think I put that at the right level, did I? No, that's I've got in the wrong brackets, haven't I? Yeah, I think I'm in the wrong brackets. I'm sure I have. Yes, I did. Oh, silly boy. There we go. Good job, I tested it. There we go. Yeah, that might explain an awful lot. Yes. Oh, hang on a sec, that's the other way around. I've got my logic in reversed, haven't I? Oh, yes, I have. No? Have I? What? So if it's nil, it's calling... Oh, if it is nil. Right, okay, yes. So I've got these the wrong way around, haven't I? Yes. Oops. That's right. So if we put global ops as... So if it's... No. What does that do? What? I'm confused now. So global ops is nil. Oh no, that's right, isn't it? What we're talking about. Sunday, can't think. Yeah, so if it's nil, then it does the... Yeah, that's right then. Yeah, so if it's nil, then it does the build of the full string, which is what we're doing here. Ta-da! And if we're providing something, then it's just going to return aliases. Hee. There we go. I don't think that's the final solution, but it's an interesting. It's a simple approach. So if I go back to our Clojure project, and let's go back to the dir locals. If I get rid of these, so the global options are populated, so it should just return those and then use those, and I'll know that is the case because it won't produce the steps which it's already producing anyway. So that's how I know it's not going in to that other one, because the steps flag isn't included. So let's go to the code. Let's revert the buffer just to make sure it's loading the thing. Let's kill the REPL, so let's do that again. Just to make sure it's loading the .dir locals. And now, for the moment of truth, if I do segment start, cider-jack-in, yes, it's working. Ta-da! Just to make sure the Clojure code is working. Ta-da! Yes, it's working. So I can evaluate things in the REPL. I don't check the REPL buffer very often, but let's just check, make sure there's no... oh, there are warnings. Oh, what warnings have we got? Oh. CLJ, refactor, and refactor and REPL are out of sync. Ooh, I might need to check on the versions that I'm setting on there. Oh, I haven't had that since Clojure, since pre-Clojure 0.10. Which is the advantage of having the jack-in manage it all for you. Oh, it's not reporting the CLJ refactor. No, it's not reporting the refactor and REPL version for some reason. Let me check. I don't think that's... Is that an issue? It might be an issue for refactor. I'll have to check with Bozdar. So let's just check with the deps.in file. So we've got... Oh, it might be because... Oh yes, because I'm not... That's because I'm not bringing in refactor and REPL, so it doesn't have a version at all. so if we change to the cider-CLJ refactor, so if we use this alias, it might get rid of that. It should get rid of that. Let's be positive. It should get rid of that warning. That's not what we want, is it now? So we want to go to the dir locals. So instead of middleware cider-CLJ, we want the refactor one instead. Oops, missed the code off. There we go. Okay, and then go back to the code. Let's kill the REPL. Definitely not a thing running. Let's revert the buffer. Yes, please. Boop. Then hopefully this is going to use the new alias. It is, yes, there we go. That picked that up properly. Give it a second. Let's load it in. That's working. It's evaluating. Lovely jubbly. Yes, that's correct. That's all working properly. And so if we go back to the REPL, that's not the REPL buffer. Is that from me just doing the error in there, or is it coming up with some other error? Let's kill the REPL, start it again. Then let's go and have a look straight into the REPL buffer. See if it's creating any error messages. Oh no, that's okay. So it must have been when I did the evaluation. Let's go and check. Let's check where. Yeah, we did. That's working okay, that's working okay, and then this one I think purposely causes an error. Oh yeah, because we've got an unbalanced map in there. I think that's why I got the error. Yes. Oh yeah. So it's end of file while reading it because it's got an incorrect number of arguments in the map I'm trying to create. Yes. Okay, there we go. So that's why I've got that error. Okie dokie, so that is a correct error, and the same for that one as well, I think, yes. Oh, Lisp reader error exception. That's why all those are commented out, because they all go bang. Yes, there's a working, that's fine, there we go. Let's go back to X Spacemax. This works and simplifies things, and then, but you might want to set something in the alias, but then still use the jack-in. Ooh, crap. So we could have another def custom. because it's only going to be a problem including all the dependencies if you've got an alias that conflicts with some of the dependencies you're pulling in from Cider. So I think trying out with the REPL data visualization tool, that had some dependencies that didn't work, and I think that's one of the reasons why I was trying to switch everything off. But apart from that, you're really kind of only doing additive dependencies when you're checking in. So I think just having an override, if you have a simple override, like variable, so rather than checking whether seekops is empty, we have something, what would that variable be called? Should be so cider. What are the other aliases called? Sorry, the other variables called in our .dir locals. Go to for Clojure. Oh, they're not there anymore. I've got a list of them. I've got a big long list in practically Spacemacs. Practically Spacemacs. Big long list of all the variables in Cider. So then the reference Cider config variables. That's not quite what I wanted. There we go. So we got the Clojure CLI commands, Clojure CLI global options. So that's the aliases. Parameters passed to, and that's the parameters. I mean, we still need those parameters if we're not including them in the alias. And unless you document that you have to have an alias, that seems to be reducing the simplicity of using Cider. If we kind of force people to create an alias for Cider, or we force everybody to install my user level Clojure deps.eden configuration, that seems a little bit draconian for me. But if we have one of these variables, so Cider Clojure CLI, a bit of hammock time probably required for this, but so we'd have like a def custom for called something like CLI aliases only. Only. yeah, so if we include that with the slightly incorrectly titled, so if we have Clojure CLI aliases as a more correctly named version of the global options, although you can still, no, I think, you can still, because you could pass the, I mean, the global options could also be setting the M flag and all the other things. But would you do that in, I guess if you're doing that in global options, you don't actually want that. But if it's not in global options, you still do need it. You kind of got chicken and egg things there. So if we keep the global options as it is, and then people have the option to do that, and then do you just want to use the global options? Like CLI global options only or exclusively, and then it doesn't add any other extra stuff in there. Because if you because otherwise then you'd have to, you always have to include something in there, and it wouldn't actually make Jack-in any point anymore. May as well just use like CLJ connect. But it is a convenience, using Jack-in convenience to be able to start the REPL, give it all the information it needs to, and then connect to it. So if we have cider, we stick with the name, because it's global options, it's all the options that you can pass to cider, whether that be an alias, so on. And then you have like the default, if you don't pass that, then you have the default things, but you can still inject a specific alias in there. The only thing is that if you do provide a main, you'd have to kind of that's maybe what Dominic was on about. You'd have to potentially parse the global options to decide whether you should include all the rest of the stuff as well. But if you have a flag to say, I only want to use the global options, I don't want to include the dependencies, Clojure CLI parameters. So what was this one? So we got commands. So obviously we need to keep the command because that's going to be the same. That's not changing. Global options. Now I can think of it. That is, yeah. I was getting obsessed by the aliases, but it's actually everything really. And the parameters passed to Clojure to start a REPL server for, yeah, so I guess it's whether we want to include the parameters or not. And then there isn't one for the dependencies. I don't think there's an obvious way to do this. Let's see. Oops, no. So what's that again? So that's global options. 3. So we could call it yeah, I think we're going to get what's the simplest thing we could do? So the simplest thing we could do is we can define, so yeah, so they've got the, so that's the thing they can use to include, well, pretty much any global options. Yeah, so this is the options you can provide that will go onto the command line. And you can then decide to just use those options or whether to include the I think that would cover a lot of cases. Because if you're happy just in, so if you just wanted to include the test alias, then you just include the test alias, and that works fine. The cider-jack-in and just include the test alias in there, and it will use all its normal like dependencies and so on to build that. And if you just wanted to use the command line, whether it be an alias or whether it be your own particular command line, because it's just a string, so you could actually put all the whole command line options into the dir locals, then yeah, and then you can decide, you can just put the global options only to true, and it would only use that, and then you could just have this in as the check inside here. Oops, where are we going? So instead of checking the sequence is empty, then we could just put that in to see if that's true, and if that's true, then we return the global ops. So I just need to invert the order of this. And if it's nil, then we just go ahead as normal and put in the global ops, and we just have to document what it is happens if you don't have this, if this is nil by default, because that's not, if it's nil by default, it's not changing the behavior, the current behavior, the behavior people are expecting. Whereas if we switch off the dependencies, then that's going to change and confuse people and say, why is cider broken now? So we could have cider, so we could either have that one, or we could have cider Clojure what do we call this? So jack-in dependencies, jack-in options. So if that's true, then we do the normal jack-in dependencies and parameters. Actually, and then we don't need only. But if we set that to nil, we can basically switch those off, which is what I was looking for right from the start. Just a single variable that switches that off. So if it's nil, then there's no skip. So then we skip the this function. and if we keep the R true by default in the cider code base, then you can come in and switch off using the dir locals, and then it'll just run whatever you pass in as the global options in this variable that already exists. Okay. I'm going to think about that for a while, and I'm going to thank Rostislav for their advice on doing Elisp. It's very useful, got me going, and I'm going to go and write this up in the GitHub thing that I raised. So I'm actually going to create a new issue from doing this, I think, maybe. Oh, that's what he meant. So wherever params are coming from, we make params just part of the global options. Then you'd have to decide whether you needed to merge. You'd have to create something new for aliases. Because if you just wanted, actually no, that gets a bit messier then. Because then you don't know whether to, if you merge the params with the aliases with global options, so the existing cider params that we pull in, then how do you know when to include them? Well, you have the flag there. Yeah, so if you have the flag to switch the params on and off, but just make that as part of the global options. Yeah, so if you've got global options, you can provide them in, and they'll be merged with the params by default, because that's currently what happens. And then, if we introduce a new variable, you can just say, oh, I just want to switch all of that off, and it will only use what's provided on the command line. Okay, yes, I think that's what I'm happy with for now. I think I'm going to leave it there. It's sunny outside, so I'm going to go for a quick walk. Thank you, Rostislav, for your help, most appreciated. And I'm going to wrap and end the stream up now. Thank you all, bye.